Devil May Cry 4 is a game that I've been following for roughly 10 years. The absurd amount of tech behind the simplicity of the gameplay, the soundtrack, the learning curve and the skill ceiling. All of this continues to impress me and inspires me to practice my gameplay more and more. Right now, you're watching the gameplay of the people that spent years of polishing their skills, playing with something unique. And that unique thing that you're watching right now is called style. This is what all Devil May Cry games are about. You see, in Devil May Cry games, you want to play with the enemies, wanna slash them a little bit, launch in the air, continue the combo in the air, want to juggle them, throw everything we have and taunt them, finish them off with some extra style. The DMC games will reward you for your creativity in the fights. This also includes a specific tech that you'll see a lot in the various style videos. This is the way of playing the game for style, the way it's supposed to be played. There's already a pretty strong community full of real skillful players, but I want to tell you about the other way you can play Devil May Cry games, the efficiency way. When we play for the efficiency, we don't care about the style, we don't care about playing on the highest difficulty. What we care about is that if the damage is high enough to kill the enemy, and if it's the fastest one. In my opinion, lack of tutorials and insanely learning curve are the two main reasons people are not picking up Devil May Cry 3 or Devil May Cry 4. Myself, before coming to the conclusion that tutorial is necessary, I spent a lot of time speedrunning Devil May Cry 4. In the following videos, I will share some knowledge that's necessary to progress during the run, and I will leave some things instead for you guys to uncover your own vision of how this game should be played. I should probably mention that this tutorial is not viewer friendly, it will not cover the very basics of this game, and I expect you, the viewer, have played at least one Devil May Cry game before. Therefore, considering Devil May Cry games lack properly written tutorials, speedruns are just new blood in style, I decided to make my own tutorial. I'm Mikarazio, and this is my way of playing Devil May Cry 4, the speedrunning way. I hope it will make you play better. In this episode, we will talk about 4 major things in the game: inertia, sliding, iframes, and movement. I also want to talk about the very small details in the combat system, so we'll start from that, I think. First of all, I have to explain that the hits you're making against the enemy will eventually stagger that enemy. Here, you can see me using basic combo to launch frosts in the air, but the frost on the left side didn't went upwards. Let me explain my vision of this mechanic. So, let's imagine an invisible counter. Whenever that counter fills up against a specific enemy, the next attack will stagger him. That counter decays over time and resets whenever the enemy is staggered. This approach will work against all enemies, including the bosses. Some enemies can be easily staggered, like scarecrows, and some enemies, like the frost you see right now, require a different approach. Since the knockback value is different for every attack, the strongest one will usually give you the better impact. Most of the players don't think about this mechanic, but that depends on the way you play. In a speedrun, we use specific patterns of attack, so-called cycles, to stun the boss as fast as possible and finish them off with our strongest attacks. This mechanic is essential, as the majority of the boss fight strategies will rely on it. Talking about our own character, whenever we take 3 hits, we will be knocked back. During that animation, we are invulnerable. There are some exceptions to that rule, like charged attacks, various uppercuts, even some boss-specific attacks, like Credo ones. All of this should give you a general idea of how you can utilize knockback mechanic in a game, and how you can manipulate this mechanic to give you as much efficiency as possible. Speaking of a difficulty, you take the Devil Hunter difficulty, the normal one. Running on a game on higher difficulties like Dante Must Die one will give us more problems with the boss cycles and orb games, so it's the optimal one to learn and to run. And now, it's time for a huge talk about one of the most important parts of the run, the movement one. We will start our talk with a comparison of the 2 main characters, Nero on the left side and Dante on the right side. We will compare the regular movement speed and the movement speed of a sprint, which is the fastest way to travel in a run. Despite Dante having a small boost towards his movement speed in his Devil Trigger form, Nero might have a chance to compete against Dante in another comparison that we will do right now. The second comparison, however, will compare sprint towards Singer and Streak. Since we cannot use Devil Trigger Singer most of the times, we will focus our tutorial on the speed instead. The way you activate sprint is very easy. You just have to walk around, make 2 steps, and you'll get a permanent speed bonus. And as always, there are some very small details that I'll have to talk about. First of all, the sprint itself has its own mechanics. Whenever you enter a zone with the enemies, sprint will time a bit more time to activate. The clip on the left side, as you'll see right now, has a scarecrow that delays the activation of our sprint. Another interesting mechanic that relies using sprint is the entering a new room. Whenever you do so, there is a chance that your sprint will not disappear. And now we've come to the mechanic I prefer the most in this game: inertia. Exploding physics in this game is something you'll have to learn if you want to try out very difficult skips such as Mission 3-1. In this video we'll focus on the charge shot inertia, but I'll give you a glimpse of what you can perform with inertia. Such notable mentions are inertial rainstorm, guard flying, inertial Mustang, and finally the one we'll be talking about: charge shot inertia. Charge shot inertia will be used in 2 different skips that will utilize the same base loop that you can see right now. I don't recommend practicing it if you're new to the game, but eventually you'll have to. So let's talk about the mistakes you can make. The first clip features doing the cycle, but mashing charge shot after the first one. Don't do that. Always buffer charge shot 1 after the melee for maximum efficiency. The next clip features the completely opposite part, rushing the cycle. Rushing will give you less inertia, on top of risking your setup, which is not acceptable in a run. Compare these 3 clips and you'll be able to see the mistakes that you can do with this seemingly easy cycle. As a keyboard player, this is the best example of inertia that I can give to you. I decided to show you that you can move around in midair by holding the movement button before mashing your melee. Use that in your practice sessions for maximum effect. We came to the final part of our first episode. Sliding and jumping are both extremely useful tools in the run. Both of them are very easy to use, and both of them are extremely easy to miss during your playthrough. Sliding is also known as a stinger jump or stinger launch, but we'll talk about slides later. As you probably already noticed, jumping for both characters looks exactly the same. You get the same height, same amount of jumps, unless you do something with the characters itself. Before we extend the interesting part, it's worth mentioning that jumping won't break your sprint. However, because air hike is considered a bonus neutral jump, therefore using it will break your sprint. Jumping itself is not the only mobility tool, but also an offensive one. Each jump gives you plenty of invulnerability frames that you can use to ignore the enemy attack. Should you jump too early or too late, you will get hit. Same principle also applies to a roll, another offensive tool that you can use by locking on and jumping to the left or to the right side of a character. Experimenting with jumping is very important, because most of the players use jumping as a panic button. One of the early experiments with jumping that we've done was sliding. Slide occurs whenever you use a dash-based move against the edge of any platform. Doing so will launch your character forward. This is the fastest way you can travel in the game, and therefore I recommend using whenever you can. Since you can use sliding with every character besides Trish, there is no reason to not use that. Therefore, I want to demonstrate how slide can be used by utilizing also all the technique we've learned today, such as inertia, such as sliding and jumping. Here you can see me doing a reversed version of Mission 7 skip that you'll have to learn later on, and we'll talk about it in the future videos. Because right now, I think it's all that I wanted to share for today. Thank you for watching this video, thank you for tuning in. I hope the next episodes will be more interesting for you and will cover more material.